In today's video, I'll be covering 8 regrets that rich retirees have at the age of 65. One of the most surprising things about working with wealthy retirees is that the regrets they have rarely involve saving enough. Over my years advising high net worth clients, I've heard the same disappointments repeatedly, even with those with millions in their retirement accounts. That's exactly why I'm making this video today, to share the 8 most common regrets from wealthy retirees you've likely never heard of. Let's get right into it. The first regret is in waiting too long to start estate planning, which is actually really common because it's such an easy thing to put off while we're healthy and living busy lives. For those who have accumulated above average assets, estate planning can feel daunting, and wealth often brings complexity, multiple properties, various account types, and even different tax treatments. This only grows with time and contributes to this regret. You may have thought that I was going to say a spouse passes away unexpectedly before an estate plan is put into place, and this is absolutely true. But in terms of what's more likely, the mere act of having to catch up in the estate planning process can be incredibly overwhelming. By age 65, most families have transferred their earning potential into the savings that they've accumulated. So they now have a lot of money and other assets that are titled in different ways and various other sources of financial means, which only further complicates things. This regret hits harder for wealthy retirees as they often have complex assets like real estate and investments that are spread across different types of accounts, making the process far more overwhelming than it would be with fewer assets. This complexity can also delay the process, leaving their assets potentially vulnerable to taxes and probate fees that could have otherwise been avoided. To avoid this, it's generally wise to begin this planning sooner rather than later. I always suggest getting started as soon as there's a marriage, the birth of a child, or if significant assets have accumulated, specifically outside of retirement accounts. And as a rule of thumb, I think once you've reached your 40s, it's typically a good time to get going on this stuff. Starting early also gives you the time to make careful, informed decisions rather than rushing. A good example of this is a couple who has several homes located in different states, in addition to other assets that are spread across both retirement and non-retirement financial accounts. They didn't realize that each state has different death taxes and probate laws, and that the cost basis for taxes for many of the individual stocks that they own have never been tracked. The process to consolidate all the needed information in making so many important decisions at once would be highly stressful for this couple. Proactive planning gives retirees peace of mind knowing that their wealth is protected and distributed as they intended. The second common regret is when 65-year-old retirees underestimate their expenditures and don't give long-term care risks enough thought. If you've watched any of my videos, then you'll know that I discuss this topic a lot, and there's a reason for that. Your future spending needs affect everything. Those who underestimate their future needs are by definition underestimating their financial risk. This applies to anything that money is needed for or may be needed for in the future, and isn't only relevant for those who are considered to be pushing their money. Affluent retirees may be generally wealthy enough to cover whatever expenses come up, but the cost of long-term care can easily exceed expectations. Needing custodial care specifically is a risk that often goes unaddressed, and I've dealt with many 65-year-olds who regret not giving the topic enough attention. Long-term care insurance today is highly expensive. There are different types of products, most of which are difficult to understand, and it's just not a fun insurance to shop for. So I don't think that the common regret for wealthier 65-year-olds is that they underestimated this cost and didn't purchase insurance. It's more so that they didn't consider the true extent of this potential risk when planning for their retirement. This regret is especially relevant for wealthier retirees who hope to leave a legacy for their family, as the high costs associated with needing long-term care can quickly erode even larger estates. To put things into context, consider a more extreme situation. Imagine that your spouse has a stroke, was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, or experiences some other health event leading them to need custodial care at a young age. I wish that I could say that I've never encountered this scenario, but I certainly have. If the spouse ultimately needs care beyond what you can offer, it's not unrealistic in this scenario for them to need care that's delivered in a facility where the cost can easily exceed $150,000 per year. Custodial care is ridiculously expensive, so even for those who are wealthy, this risk can easily blow up an otherwise healthy retirement plan or severely limit a future legacy. To avoid this, considering long-term care risks in your 50s or your early 60s and understanding the costs that you may face can help you plan without unnecessary financial stress. The third common regret that I see is in being too scared to spend. And I know this is kind of contradictory to my last point, but I've seen it go both ways. Some wealthy retirees develop a lifelong habit of frugality, which can make it hard for them to feel comfortable spending even when they know they can afford it. In fact, I found that some of my firm's more wealthy clients are actually more afraid that they'll somehow spend down all of their money even if they're independently wealthy, and it would literally be impossible for them to deplete all of their assets during their lifetime. Everything in retirement is about balance, and if it's unrealistic that you'll run out of money, regardless of investment or calamitous outcome with regard to your health, it's important not to compromise your lifestyle and to take that extra vacation to the Alps. This regret often affects wealthy retirees more than others because they've accumulated significant wealth yet worry about maintaining it, sometimes at the expense of their own enjoyment. To avoid this, stress testing your retirement plan can help bring a sense of security. For example, if you construct a financial plan using conservative assumptions and then run your future spending against your income and your assets under a scenario that's akin to the Great Depression or worse, if the plan still works, this should presumably offer any reasonable person the peace of mind to know that they won't outlive their assets or not leave their survivors considerable wealth. With a balanced approach, retirees can enjoy their wealth without compromising their financial security. Now, we can only cover this regret in a small amount of detail here because we have to move on to the next point. But we'll be looking at this topic in much greater detail in a video later this month, so click subscribe so you don't miss it. The fourth big regret is that they retired too early without a plan to keep busy. It might sound surprising, but there's actually a lot of research showing that people who retire early without staying mentally and physically active tend to age faster and have a higher risk of cognitive decline. Studies like those published in Economic Perspectives and Psychological Medicine show that retirees who don't stay engaged are more likely to experience memory issues and even dementia. This regret is particularly relevant for wealthy retirees as they're far more likely to be financially able to stop working early, but without a plan, they can end up feeling bored and unfulfilled. And sure, working longer can come with its own set of health trade-offs, but the main point here is that many 65-year-olds who retire early end up in a bit of a rut. Without a plan for how they'll fill their days meaningfully, they often find themselves stuck in a monotonous routine, missing the mental and social stimulation that they had while they were working. To avoid this, it's wise to start thinking about your post-retirement plans before actually leaving work. Try exploring hobbies, volunteer work, or even part-time consulting that could give structure to your day. A good example is that of a fresh retiree who transitions gradually by taking on consulting work and volunteer roles to help stay active and connected while easing into retirement. This approach keeps retirees engaged, helping them feel fulfilled even without the demands of a career. The fifth big regret is paying too much in preventable taxes. There are so many ways that a wealthy 65-year-old household can avoid paying unnecessary taxes without even having to flirt with the gray area of the tax code. And it doesn't always require executing a fancy strategy that involves giving money away to a trust. These are strategies like strategically converting dollars into Roth or selling appreciated taxable investments without having to pay any federal capital gains. This is a common regret because these opportunities diminish once you get into your 70s and are forced to begin withdrawing pre-tax dollars from your retirement accounts. So each year that goes by where you're not considering savvy income tax planning strategies, you could be leaving tens of thousands in tax savings on the table, which if you consider in the context of the long-term time value of money, this can be a major opportunity cost to you and your future beneficiaries. A good example of this could be that of a 65-year-old who retired at the age of 60. After retirement, they've been spending down their bank savings and as a result have been paying no income taxes each year of retirement. In this case, there may have been 5 years where they could have been either unwinding appreciated stock to fund their spending or converting to Roth dollars at the 10 or the 12% marginal tax rate that will otherwise come out of the accounts in the future at the 22 or the 24% rate once they're forced to start spending retirement dollars in their 70s. The sixth regret is keeping too much money on the sidelines or being too conservative with an investment allocation. This happens when retirees, especially with those with substantial assets, become overly cautious, holding large cash reserves or investing in ultra-safe assets that generate minimal returns. For those with above-average assets, this may not seem like a big deal if we're thinking solely in terms of covering your basic retirement needs. However, wealthier retirees often have additional goals, such as maximizing the size of their future estate, supporting charities, or building a family legacy. When they become too conservative, these long-term goals can suffer as their wealth may not grow sufficiently to meet those objectives. The challenge with this approach is that investment returns over short-term time horizons, like within a year, are largely unpredictable. Consider COVID, for example. There are weeks where many investors feared the worst. There was a literal hole in the economy for a number of days, and stocks sold off by around 35% over a period of several weeks. Seeing this level of volatility, many retirees became cautious, choosing to wait it out rather than staying invested, especially those who feared further downturns. Those who decided to sit on the sidelines and wait for a vaccine may have been disappointed to see that the market rebounded rapidly, ultimately producing very strong returns by the end of the year. By staying out of the market, these investors may have missed out on substantial gains, which limited the growth of their estate or their charitable assets. To avoid this, it's important for retirees to find a balanced approach that suits their risk tolerance without sacrificing growth potential. A diversified portfolio that includes a mix of conservative investments and growth-oriented assets can help retirees stay invested through market fluctuations, protecting both current income and long-term goals. For example, consider a 65-year-old retiree who initially planned to hold a significant portion of their wealth in cash, worried about market volatility. After discussing their goals of supporting a charitable foundation and leaving a legacy for their family, we shifted a part of their allocation into higher quality dividend-paying stocks. This gave them the income that they needed while also allowing for their capital to grow over time. This way, they were able to achieve their goals without the regret of missing out on market gains. The seventh regret is not using tax-advantaged charitable giving strategies. This regret occurs when retirees miss opportunities to optimize their charitable contributions for tax savings, often because they aren't aware of the tax advantage options that are available to them. Since the standard deduction was doubled under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act beginning in 2018, it's become increasingly difficult to use charitable gifts as an itemized deduction. This change means that many retirees who give regularly, but not at a level that brings their tax deductions materially above the standard deduction, may receive less or no tax benefits whatsoever from their generosity. For those who give regularly, there could be a lot of tax savings left on the table that could have otherwise been taken advantage of. I strongly believe in the doing good while doing good approach, where donors can benefit by saving on taxes while also offering financial support to meaningful causes. This regret is especially relevant for wealthier 65-year-olds, as they're more likely to have both the means and the flexibility to give strategically. Using tax-advantaged giving strategies allows them to increase the impact of their contributions and potentially preserve more of their wealth for their other financial goals, such as leaving a legacy for family members. Some good examples of strategies to do so are front-loading gifts to a donor-advised fund or giving appreciated investments directly to whatever organization you're looking to support. By using a donor-advised fund, retirees can front-load or bunch their charitable contributions into one tax year, allowing them to exceed the standard deduction threshold and maximize their tax benefit. They can even do so without compromising their flexibility around when the money is given by using a donor-advised fund. Similarly, donating appreciated assets directly to a charity avoids capital gains taxes and potentially offers a write-off on your income taxes, allowing the donor to give a larger gift with the same asset. For example, consider a 65-year-old who's been giving $5,000 each year from their bank savings to a charity, but since 2018, they haven't been itemizing their tax deductions. Instead of doing $5,000 annually, they could have taken $30,000 in year one and made the donation up front to receive the tax benefit. If the charity is listed on a donor-advised fund, they may even be able to continue spreading out their donations by giving the $30,000 over the ensuing years. The eighth and final common regret is failing to diversify out of a single asset or a concentrated stock position. This often happens with individuals who built their wealth through a company's stock or a specific industry. Many times they feel confident sticking with what they know or don't want to pay taxes on a sale. But over-reliance on a single stock or a sector can become a riskier bet as retirement approaches, where preserving wealth becomes more critical than maximizing return potential. For wealthier retirees, this is especially relevant because holding a large position in a single stock can expose them to significant downside volatility. At 65, these retirees may realize that their high exposure to a single asset creates undue risk, which can be harmful if the asset underperforms just as they need the funds for retirement or their other goals. To avoid this regret, it's important to at least have a game plan to gradually diversify these holdings over time, even if it means navigating tax implications. For example, consider somebody who holds a significant amount of a company's stock and wants to limit tax impacts of selling it. They might implement a phased approach to sell portions of the stock over a few years, reallocating to a diversified mix of different types of investments thereafter. Now that you know the 8 regrets that rich retirees have at the age of 65, you can better plan for your own retirement with these in mind. But here's the thing, since this is only a generalized YouTube video, I can't sit down with you and analyze your exact situation to help you come up with a game plan for retirement and how to personally avoid these regrets taking place. And since I want to make sure that you avoid every regret that we talked about today, the best way for me to help with that is to sit down with you one-on-one, analyze your exact situation, and help you move forward. So I want to offer you an entirely complimentary one-on-one call with me where I'll do just that and help you avoid these regrets down the road. Click the link in the description to book that call, and I'll see you in the next one.